July 2025, Eastern Ukraine. At first light, the horizon trembles. A long line of Russian armored vehicles creeps through the mist, their engines breaking the silence of a ruined village. From above, the landscape appears calm, no movement, no sound, only the faint echo of metal. Yet every meter of ground hides a secret. Within moments, that silence will turn into chaos. What begins as a routine advance will end as one of the most revealing failures of Russia's modern warfare. This report traces how a single misjudged push unraveled an elite armored column, exposed the limits of traditional battlefield power, and forced military strategists around the world to reconsider what superiority really means in 21st century combat. It was early morning on July 17, 2025, when a Russian armored column began its slow advance across a dusty field near the Donetsk front. The column included tanks and APCs moving in a loose formation, a tactic meant to avoid the watchful eyes of Ukrainian drones and precision artillery. The plan seemed simple: move fast, stay spread out, and cross the defensive line before detection. But the quiet land they were driving over had already been prepared. Beneath the grass and mud, thousands of anti-tank mines waited in silence. According to Le Monde's April 2025 report, Ukraine had intensified its use of landmines along likely Russian advance routes, combining them with aerial surveillance to form a layered defense system. This meant that every road and every open field could become a trap. The Russians knew about the mines but hoped their engineers could clear a narrow passage. They didn't realize that Ukrainian scouts had already detected their movement hours before through a series of small, battery-powered drones circling high above the tree line. As the convoy crept forward, the lead APC rolled over a buried mine. The explosion was sudden and brutal. A flash of fire tore through the front of the vehicle, throwing debris into the air. Black smoke rose like a signal flare announcing their position. Within seconds, the scattered formation lost its shape. Crews shouted orders over the radio, unsure whether to stop or keep moving. The detonation had broken their rhythm, the one thing that keeps armored units alive under surveillance. Overhead, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones recorded every movement. Operators inside mobile control stations relayed exact GPS coordinates to nearby artillery batteries. One artillery team, positioned nearly 6 miles away, received the coordinates and began adjusting its fire control. According to Reuters, Ukrainian forces now use software that links drone feeds directly to their artillery systems, cutting response time from minutes to seconds. The first artillery shell landed off target, kicking up a column of dirt beside the burning APC. But that miss did not matter. A few seconds later, the second round hit exactly where it was meant to. The shockwave rolled through the open field, shaking nearby vehicles. Another APC caught fire. The Russian crews tried to reverse, but the narrow road limited their space. Their formation, already stretched out to avoid air attacks, now became a line of trapped metal under direct fire. From the drone's live feed, Ukrainian operators watched the scene unfold. The advantage of technology was clear. They could see what every tank commander could not. Each time a vehicle stopped, it became a fixed target. The Guardian later described these moments as proof that movement itself has become a risk in the age of drones. The battlefield was no longer measured by distance, but by seconds, the time it took for artillery to adjust and strike again. Inside the Russian convoy, panic began to spread. Soldiers abandoned their vehicles and ran toward the nearest cover. The sound of drone rotors overhead added to their fear. They knew what came next. Once a column halts under fire, its survival window closes quickly. The coordination between landmines, drones, and artillery was no coincidence. It was a strategy built on months of battlefield adaptation. By the 5th minute of the assault, 2 vehicles were destroyed, several others immobilized. The rest of the column hesitated, caught between the order to advance and the instinct to retreat. In that hesitation lay the real victory for Ukraine. When movement stopped, time stopped too, and the sky above turned into a weapon. For Ukraine, this encounter was not just a tactical win, but a demonstration of control. The integration of mines and drones showed that even low-cost weapons could paralyze a mechanized force worth millions of dollars. It also revealed a broader lesson for the modern battlefield. Heavy armor, no matter how advanced, is blind without real-time intelligence. As the smoke settled and the echoes of artillery faded, the once formidable convoy became a row of broken silhouettes scattered across a mined road. It was the beginning of a long day for Russian armor, and only the first sign of how deadly a coordinated defense could be. What follows next shows that once movement is lost, survival becomes a matter of seconds, and the second wave of Russian armor would soon learn that the hard way. The first explosion shattered the stillness of the steppe, but the real storm began only seconds later. As the black smoke from the destroyed APC rose into the sky, Ukrainian artillery crews, positioned miles behind the front line, received exact coordinates from reconnaissance drones hovering above. Those drones acted as silent guides, feeding live video and GPS data directly to gunners through encrypted links. In modern warfare, that connection between air and ground decides life or death. According to Reuters, Ukraine's newest targeting systems have reduced artillery response time from several minutes to under 45 seconds, thanks to real-time drone transmission. This means that the moment a target appears, the first shell is already being loaded. The crews at the artillery battery near Kramatorsk began adjusting their elevation wheels, communicating through short radio bursts. The first round whistled through the air and landed wide, sending a shockwave that covered the field in dust. The second landed exactly on target. From the drone feed, operators watched the fireball bloom like a small sun. The strike was perfect. Metal fragments scattered hundreds of feet away, tearing through nearby vehicles. The Russian formation froze. For armored units, movement is survival. Once they stop, they become easy prey. Yet in that moment of shock, orders vanished under the roar of explosions. The commanders shouted on the radio, but the noise drowned every signal. Within seconds, the column transformed from an attacking force into a line of motionless targets. A report by the International Center for Defense and Security, ICDS, notes that traditional Russian armored doctrine depends on speed moving fast to reduce exposure to enemy fire. But in Ukraine, speed alone no longer protects. The minefields stop the advance. The drones hover overhead. The artillery finishes what the mines began. It is a perfect chain reaction. One mistake leads to destruction, and each destroyed vehicle becomes the next target's marker. Inside the burning field, Russian crews tried to regroup. Some soldiers attempted to restart their engines. Others abandoned their vehicles completely, sprinting toward a shallow trench nearby. Ukrainian gunners, using data relayed from the drones, shifted their aim slightly left to block the escape route. The shells landed in precise rhythm 3 rounds every 30 seconds, creating what military analysts call a kill box. The Ukrainian Ground Forces Command later described this coordination as part of the new sensor-shooter loop, where reconnaissance and artillery operate as one continuous system. Before this war, artillery relied mostly on forward observers or guesswork. Now, every drone becomes an eye in the sky. Every gun a response to those eyes. The result is faster, more accurate, and more devastating than anything seen on Europe's battlefields in decades. By the third strike, 2 Russian APCs were burning, and a tank near the rear of the convoy tried to reverse, crushing a smaller vehicle in the process. Panic spread like fire through the radios. Soldiers shouted coordinates that made no sense, their voices overlapping in static. The fear was not only of the shells, but of the invisible drones circling overhead. The sky itself felt hostile. As the attack continued, Ukraine's artillery battery maintained steady fire for nearly 7 minutes, hitting with precision that only drones could provide. Each explosion cut deeper into Russian morale. From above, it looked almost mechanical. Detect, aim, strike, repeat. There was no room for chaos on the Ukrainian side, only rhythm and coordination. The difference between the two armies was visible not in their equipment, but in how they connected their systems. By 8:43 a.m., the field had turned silent again except for the crackle of burning fuel. The Russian crews that survived began retreating on foot, leaving their tanks behind. What had started as an organized push now resembled a disordered escape. The power of armor, the confidence that steel could protect, was gone. This moment changed the psychological balance of the battle. Once soldiers realized that no amount of armor guarantees safety, the entire formation loses cohesion. For Ukrainian defenders, this was the clearest sign yet that technology, not tonnage, decides the outcome of modern warfare. As the smoke cleared, Russia sent a second, larger column into the same corridor, 8 vehicles strong believing weight could succeed where speed had failed. They would soon find that the battlefield had already learned their pattern, and every path forward led deeper into the kill zone. By mid-morning, July 17, 2025, the smoke from the first destroyed column had barely cleared when a second Russian mechanized group appeared on the horizon. This time, the column was larger and better armed, 8 armored vehicles led by a tank and followed by a line of infantry carriers. Commanders hoped that more steel would break through the Ukrainian defenses. They believed the previous failure was only bad luck. What they didn't realize was that the entire area had already become a carefully mapped kill zone. The convoy advanced along a narrow dirt road that wound through open farmland. Each vehicle kept about 30 meters of distance from the next to reduce the chance of being hit together. The lead tank moved cautiously, scanning the road with its gun barrel like a blind man's cane. Behind it, the 7 APCs followed slowly, their crews unaware that the same minefield lay directly beneath their tracks. At 9:05 a.m., the lead vehicle rolled over a buried anti-tank mine. The explosion ripped off its treads and threw the turret slightly sideways. Flames burst out from the hull, marking the column's position for miles around. Before the Russian crew could react, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones flying 400 feet above transmitted the coordinates to nearby FPV first-person view drone operators stationed several kilometers away. Within seconds, a small squadron of FPV drones was airborne, their electric motors barely audible. According to Kyiv Post, these drones are often modified racing models carrying explosive charges of 1.5 to 2 kilograms, enough to penetrate light armor. The first drone descended rapidly, striking the disabled lead tank at the rear engine deck. The explosion tore through the already damaged armor, sending shrapnel into the field. The second FPV drone then targeted the next APC in line, hitting it directly on the turret. The impact caused a secondary explosion, likely from stored ammunition. Drone footage released later showed flames spreading down the column, vehicle by vehicle, like a domino chain of destruction. Meanwhile, Ukrainian artillery batteries began shelling the flanks and rear of the convoy to block any attempt to escape. Caught between the minefield ahead and artillery fire behind, the convoy had no room to maneuver. Some crews tried to turn their vehicles around, but the narrow road and burning wrecks made retreat impossible. Others jumped out and ran for cover in the nearby ditches. The Ukrainian drones pursued relentlessly. Operators guided each FPV manually, watching through headsets as they locked onto targets one by one. It was precision without pause, each strike followed by another within seconds. Military experts from The Economist describe this kind of attack as a kill web in motion, a layered defense system combining static mines, aerial drones, and indirect fire to trap and destroy advancing forces. What made it so effective was cost and coordination. Each FPV drone costs roughly $400, far cheaper than a single artillery shell or missile. Yet when used in swarms, they can inflict millions of dollars in losses on a mechanized force. By 9:20 a.m., half the convoy was burning. One tank near the rear tried to open fire at the drones, but its gun couldn't track targets that small and fast. Its cage armor, the metal grille added to deflect explosives, was useless against drones attacking from above. The drones struck the vents, the weak spots, and the exposed rear. Every design advantage of Russian armor became irrelevant in this new kind of warfare. Ukrainian soldiers on nearby observation posts watched through binoculars as the last two APCs attempted to retreat. Artillery rounds landed precisely in front of them, forcing them to stop. A final FPV drone dived toward the nearest vehicle and detonated, ending the last movement in the column. When the smoke cleared, all 8 vehicles lay silent, scattered across the road in ruins. This moment proved that even a strong armored spear, when stripped of air control and battlefield awareness, becomes a liability. Terrain, once considered passive, now served as a weapon prepared, mapped, and defended by drones and mines working in perfect synchrony. For the first time since the start of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine had shown that technology and timing could overcome mass and firepower. By 9:30 a.m., Ukrainian units confirmed the area was secure. Drone footage later published by BBC News revealed an almost cinematic view of the battlefield. Twisted steel, scattered equipment, and 8 smoking wrecks lined up along a single dirt road. What had begun as a confident assault ended as another grim symbol of Russia's outdated doctrine. But Russia was not ready to give up. Minutes later, commanders ordered another assault, this time led by a single tank equipped with new cage armor and electronic jamming devices. They hoped that technology could save what tactics had failed to achieve. Ukraine, however, was ready to prove that no amount of metal could outsmart human adaptation. By 9:45 a.m., the Russians launched yet another assault, this time led by a single T-72 tank, flanked by 2 armored personnel carriers on each side. The idea was simple. The tank would break through Ukraine's line, and the APCs would follow closely behind to secure the breach. To boost their confidence, the lead tank was fitted with new cage armor, a metal grid welded over the turret and rear deck, meant to deflect top-attack munitions and drone strikes. For a few minutes, the column rolled forward steadily, its heavy engines shaking the ground. But the calm didn't last. At 9:52 a.m., a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone spotted the formation emerging from behind a tree line. The coordinates were transmitted immediately to a group of FPV first-person view drone operators positioned several kilometers away. Within moments, 4 drones took off, flying low and fast through the morning haze. According to Forbes, Ukraine now produces thousands of these drones each month, with many assembled by volunteer engineers working in underground workshops across the country. The first FPV drone struck the tank directly on its upper armor, right above the driver's hatch. The explosion sent sparks flying, but the vehicle kept moving. The second drone came in from the rear, hitting the engine deck where the protective cage was weakest. The blast ripped open a panel, exposing the internal systems. Seconds later, the third drone dived vertically and pierced through the roof, igniting stored ammunition. A violent cook-off followed, and the tank stopped dead near the edge of the forest, its turret engulfed in flames. From the air, the scene looked like a burning furnace. The support APCs halted immediately, unsure whether to continue or retreat. Ukrainian artillery, alerted by the drone feed, began firing to prevent any rescue attempts. Within 2 minutes, all movement in that section of the front had stopped. The cage armor, once promoted as Russia's solution to drone warfare, had failed again. Analysts from The Telegraph noted that these improvised metal grids can block small grenades or weak FPV drones, but they are useless against coordinated multi-angle attacks that target a vehicle's roof and engine simultaneously. The problem is not only design, it's the speed of evolution. Ukraine constantly updates its drones, adjusting flight patterns and payloads faster than Russia can modify its defenses. This encounter revealed the limits of traditional protection. Modern armor, no matter how thick, cannot defend against strikes that come from every direction below, from mines, above from drones, and from afar by artillery. The idea of dominance through heavy metal has become a weakness in a war defined by precision and agility. As Ukrainian operators watched the flames consume the disabled tank, they knew the pattern was clear. No amount of welded cages or extra plating could outmatch the combination of intelligence, coordination, and timing. In a matter of minutes, another armored spearhead had turned into a smoking monument to outdated doctrine. Yet Ukraine wasn't finished. What came next would prove that this destruction wasn't random. It was part of a new kind of warfare where every element, from mines to FPV drones to artillery, worked together as a single connected system. By 10:10 a.m., the battlefield near Donetsk had transformed into a live demonstration of what military analysts now call the kill web. It was no longer a simple defense line, but an interconnected system where every element, minefields, drones, and artillery worked together like parts of a single machine. Ukrainian commanders didn't just react to attacks, they guided them into traps. The sequence began the same way each time. Russian armor would roll forward, triggering buried anti-tank mines. The explosions didn't always destroy the vehicles instantly, but they stopped them long enough for reconnaissance drones to lock on. Those small UAVs, flying high above the smoke, relayed real-time video and coordinates to artillery teams miles away. Then came the final strike. FPV drones and precision shells hit the immobilized vehicles one by one until they burned from the inside out. Video footage from Ukrainian units showed tanks erupting in secondary explosions, bright flashes caused by stored ammunition igniting inside the hull. According to Euronews, such cook-offs are becoming common because most Russian vehicles still carry shells without compartmental protection. Once a single round catches fire, the rest follow, amplifying the damage. These clips, verified by independent analysts, revealed a deadly rhythm. Mine, immobilize, locate, destroy. The kill web is not a theory anymore, it is an active strategy. As Defense News explained, Ukraine's defenders have built a layered battlefield where even a stationary mine becomes part of an intelligent network. Mines now serve a dual purpose. They are both a physical obstacle and a trigger for the next phase of attack. Once a mine is detonated, it signals drones to identify survivors and call in fire support. This coordination gives Ukraine a major tactical advantage. Instead of fighting tank by tank, they fight through information, each drone acting as an eye, each shell as a response. It's cheaper, faster, and deadlier than traditional warfare. The synergy between low-cost FPV drones and precision artillery has rewritten how defense in depth works on modern terrain. By 10:30 a.m., what remained of the Russian columns had either retreated or burned in place. For Ukraine, the lesson was clear. The strength of defense lies not in the number of weapons, but in how seamlessly they connect. By 11 a.m., the battlefield had fallen silent except for the sound of distant artillery echoes. The second and third Russian convoys lay scattered across the plain, their tanks and APCs burning or abandoned. From above, the drone footage looked almost unreal, lines of blackened steel marking the road where an entire armored unit had vanished within hours. What began as a confident offensive had turned into one of the most decisive failures of Russia's mechanized doctrine since the start of the full-scale invasion. The losses were staggering. Dozens of vehicles were destroyed, many left intact but deserted as their crews fled under fire. The cage armor, once hailed as a quick fix against drone threats, failed repeatedly under real battlefield conditions. According to iStories, independent analysts estimate that drones were responsible for nearly 75% of Russian equipment losses in 2024, a number that continues to rise each month. Each lost vehicle wasn't just a tactical setback, it represented a collapse in logistics, manpower, and morale. By noon on July 17, 2025, The battlefield near Donetsk had fallen quiet, but the message it sent was louder than any explosion. The destruction of Russia's armored columns was not the result of luck. It was the outcome of an integrated defense that combined mines, drones, and precision artillery into one lethal network. Each strike exposed a deeper weakness. Moscow's old doctrine of mass and momentum has no place in a war ruled by speed and intelligence. As Reuters reported, Ukraine's drone-assisted artillery can hit targets in under a minute, turning even the heaviest armor into a sitting target. For the West, this battle is a warning. Future wars won't be decided by who has more tanks, but by who controls the data and the sky. Subscribe to Military Force for more frontline analysis of how modern warfare is being rewritten in real time.